The pristine white corridors of St. Mary's General Hospital had never hosted visitors quite like these. Dr. Sarah Chun straightened her scrubs as she watched the peculiar delegation approach through the automatic doors. The 3 Zephyrian Medical. Students moved with an ethereal grace that seemed almost to defy gravity, their translucent blue skin shimmering under the harsh fluorescent lights. "Welcome to Earth Medicine," Sarah said, extending her hand to the tallest of the group. The alien who had introduced himself as Harmonist Veltar in their video briefing stared at her, outstretched palm with obvious confusion, before delicately touching it with 2 elongated fingers. "We express gratitude for this learning opportunity," Veltar replied, his voice carrying an odd musical quality that seemed to resonate in Sarah's chest. His companions, the smaller resonance Kixana and the broad-shouldered frequency Zulmet, nodded in unison, their large, opalescent eyes taking in every detail of the bustling hospital environment. The Galactic Medical Academy's exchange program was ambitious, perhaps too ambitious, Sarah thought as she noticed Kixana's skin flickering from blue to a sickly green when a patient wheeled by with a visible bandage. On Zephyr Prime, all healing was accomplished through harmonic vibrations and energy field manipulation. The concept of physically opening a body to repair, it was as foreign to them as their sound-based medicine was to humans. "Let's start with something simple," Sarah suggested, leading them toward the emergency room. "A basic consultation, nothing invasive." The E was typically chaotic for a Tuesday morning. Paramedics rushed in with a construction worker who had suffered a minor cut from a saw. Nurses bustled between patients, and the familiar sounds of beeping monitors and worried conversations filled the air. To Sarah, it was background noise, the symphony of healing in action. To the Zephyrians, it was apparently a cacophony of horror. Zulmet stumbled backward when he saw the construction worker's bleeding hand. "They are leaking?" he whispered, his voice trembling with what Sarah recognized as barely contained panic. "It's just a small laceration," Sarah explained, guiding them to observe as she cleaned the wound. "See? We irrigate it with saline solution. Apply pressure to stop the bleeding," and then she never finished the sentence. The moment she picked up the suturing needle, all 3 aliens made a sound that was part gasp, part musical chord, and entirely disturbing. Kixana's skin had gone completely transparent, revealing the complex network of energy channels that served as her circulatory system. Veltar was backing away so quickly he nearly collided with a wheelchair, and Zulmet had begun emitting a low, thrumming vibration that was making nearby equipment malfunction. "You are going to pierce his flesh with that ... That metal spike?" Veltar's voice had climbed several octaves, creating an almost hypnotic harmony. "It's standard procedure," Sarah said, pausing with the needle in her hand. "How do you repair tissue damage on your planet?" "We harmonize with the cellular frequency," Kixana managed to say, though she kept her eyes firmly fixed on the ceiling. "We sing the wound closed, realign the energy pathways. There is no cutting, no penetration of a sacred vessel." The construction worker, now somewhat amused by the spectacle, held up his injured hand. "Hey, Doc, your alien friends look like they're going to be sick. Maybe they should step outside?" Sarah glanced at her charges, noting that their earlier shimmer had become more of a violent trembling. This was going to be a longer day than she'd anticipated. The simple suturing procedure that would take her 3 minutes to complete had apparently become a cross-cultural crisis of epic proportions. "Perhaps," she said diplomatically, "we should start with some theoretical discussion first. Maybe you could show me how your healing methods work?" As the 3 Zephyrians began to emit a complex, beautiful harmony that seemed to make the very air around them sparkle, Sarah realized that this exchange program was going to challenge everything she thought she knew about medicine and maybe everything they thought they knew about healing. 2. The hospital's unused conference room had been hastily converted into a cross-cultural medical demonstration space. Dr. Sarah Chun sat across from the 3 Zephyrian students, a potted plant, between them on the table. The plant's leaves were deliberately wilted. Sarah had deprived it of water for 3 days to create a controlled patient for the aliens to work with. "Observe," said Veltar, his voice taking on the formal tone of a professor. "On Zephyr Prime, we understand that all living matter resonates at specific frequencies. Disease and injury are simply disruptions in these natural vibrations." The 3 aliens positioned themselves around the dying plant, forming a perfect triangle. They began to hum, not the simple, monotone sound Sarah had expected, but a complex, layered harmony that seemed to have mathematical precision. Kixa's voice provided a low, thrumming foundation, while Zolmet added intricate middle tones. Veltar's contribution was a soaring melody that seemed to dance around the others. To Sarah's amazement, the plant began to respond. The wilted leaves slowly lifted, color returning to their edges. New growth appeared at the tips, and within minutes, the plant looked healthier than it had when she'd first brought it from the hospital garden. "Incredible," Sarah breathed. "But how does it work on more complex injuries? Broken bones? Internal? Bleeding?" The aliens exchanged glances. Their skin flickering with what Sarah had learned was their equivalent of nervous laughter. "We will demonstrate," Kixana said, though her voice carried uncertainty. "But first, we must understand your methods better. This surgery you perform, it seems so violent." Sarah had prepared for this moment. She'd arranged for Dr. Marcus Webb, the hospital's chief of surgery, to join them. Marcus was a tall, imposing man with kind eyes and the steady hands of someone who'd spent 20 years saving lives. He entered the room carrying a medical training mannequin designed to simulate various surgical procedures. "Think of it this way," Marcus said, settling into a chair beside Sarah. "Your species evolved in a world where harmonic healing was possible. Our ancestors faced different challenges: predators, trauma, infections that required immediate physical intervention. We learned to work with what we had: our hands, our tools, our understanding of anatomy." He demonstrated with the mannequin, showing how a simple appendectomy was performed. His movements were precise, economical, almost dance-like in their efficiency. "Every cut serves a purpose. Every suture saves a life. We're not being violent, we're being surgical." Zolmet leaned forward, his large eyes following Marcus's hands. "But the pain, the trauma to the body's energy systems. That's what anesthesia is for," Sarah explained. "We've learned to block pain signals, to keep patients comfortable during procedures. And afterwards, we help the body heal itself, So different from what you do, really." The demonstration continued for hours. The aliens showed how they could accelerate healing in small cuts using focused harmonic frequencies. The humans demonstrated suturing techniques, basic surgical principles, and emergency trauma care. With each exchange, both sides began to see the logic in the other's approach. It was Veltar who made the breakthrough observation. "Your methods," he said slowly, "they are immediate, decisive. When someone is dying, you cannot spend 20 minutes harmonizing their cellular frequency. You must act." "Exactly," Marcus said. "And your methods, they're gentler, more in tune with the body's natural processes. Maybe there's something we can learn from each other." The afternoon was interrupted by the harsh sound of the hospital's emergency alert system. Sarah's pager buzzed insistently, and she glanced at the message with growing concern. "Multi-vehicle accident on the highway," she said, standing quickly. "We need to get to the E. This is going to be intense." The 3 aliens looked at each other, their skin shifting through various shades of blue and green. They were obviously terrified, but Kixana spoke for all of them. "We will observe. We must understand how you save lives when harmony is not enough. As they hurried through the hospital corridors, Sarah wondered if she was making a terrible mistake. The emergency room during a major trauma was no place for squeamish medical students, even alien ones. But perhaps that was exactly where they needed to be. The emergency room had transformed into controlled chaos. 5 vehicles had collided on the interstate during rush hour, and the ambulances were arriving in rapid succession. Dr. Sarah Chun felt the familiar surge of adrenaline as she prepared for the incoming casualties. But she was acutely aware of the 3 Zephyrian students pressed against the wall, their translucent skin cycling through increasingly alarming colors. Multiple trauma, ETA 2 minutes, the radio crackled. Conscious adult male, suspected internal bleeding, possible spleen laceration. Sarah glanced at Veltar, whose usually serene expression had given way to something approaching panic. "You can leave if you need to," she said quietly. "This is going to be intense." "We will stay," he replied, though his voice carried an odd harmonic tremor. "We must understand." The first patient arrived on a stretcher, a middle-aged man in a business suit, his face pale and his breathing shallow. Sarah immediately began her assessment, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she checked vital signs and examined the patient. Behind her, she could hear the aliens' voices rising in what sounded like a prayer, or perhaps a lament. "Possible internal hemorrhage," she called out to her team. "We need to get him to surgery, Stat." It was then that Kixna made a sound unlike anything Sarah had heard before, a keening wail that seemed to resonate in every piece of equipment in the room. The small alien had pressed herself against the wall, her skin now completely transparent, revealing the complex network of energy channels that served as her circulatory system. "The life force," Kixna whispered, her voice barely audible above the activity. "I can sense it ... fading. The harmonics are wrong, so very wrong." Dr. Marcus Webb appeared at Sarah's shoulder, already scrubbed and ready for emergency surgery. "We need to move now," he said, but something in Kixna's voice made him pause. What is she sensing? "She can perceive the patient's life energy," Veltar explained, his own composure cracking. "In our culture, we would begin harmonic stabilization immediately, but your methods, they seem to make the dissonance worse." The patient's blood pressure was dropping rapidly. Sarah knew they had minutes at most before they lost him entirely. But as she watched the alien's distress, an idea began to form in her mind. "Can you sense exactly where the damage is?" she asked Kixna urgently. The small alien nodded, her large eyes filled with tears that seemed to sparkle like liquid diamonds. "The energy disruption is severe in the left middle torso. The life channels are ... severed." Sarah and Marcus exchanged glances. "Splenic laceration," Marcus said immediately. "She's pinpointed it exactly. Can you?" Sarah hesitated, then pressed on. "Can you help us? Not heal him, we need surgery for that, but guide us? Help us understand what we're dealing with." It was Zolnut who responded, his deep voice carrying new determination. "We cannot watch a being die when we might help. What do you need us to do?" The next hour was unlike anything anyone in the emergency room had ever experienced. As Marcus worked to repair the damaged spleen, the 3 aliens provided a running commentary on the patient's life force. They could sense internal bleeding before it became visible, predict complications before they manifested, and even guide the surgeon's hands toward the most critical areas. "The energy flow is stabilizing," Kixna reported as Marcus completed the delicate repair. "The life force is ... consolidating, growing stronger." When the patient's vital signs finally stabilized, the entire surgical team stood in amazed silence. The operation had taken half the usual time, with none of the typical complications. The aliens had somehow provided a level of insight that no human technology could match. "How did you do that?" Sarah asked, exhaustion and wonder competing in. Her voice. We listened, Veltar said simply. Your methods are not wrong. They are different. You work with the physical vessel. We work with the energy that animates it. Together. Together we saved a life, Marcus finished, pulling off his surgical gloves. I've never seen anything like it. But their celebration was short-lived. The radio crackled again with news of more incoming casualties, and Sarah realized that their real test was just beginning. The aliens had proven they could assist in a controlled surgical environment, but the emergency room was about to receive its next wave of trauma patients. Are you ready for this? Sarah asked her unlikely partners. The three Zephyrians looked at each other, their skin now glowing with a steady, determined light. We are ready, they said in unison, their voices harmonizing in a way that seemed to strengthen everyone in the room. The second wave of casualties tested everyone's limits. Dr. Sarah Chon moved between patients with mechanical precision, but she could feel the strain building in her alien companions. Veltar's usual graceful movements had become jerky and uncertain, while Kixana's empathic abilities were overwhelming her as she absorbed the pain and trauma of every patient who passed through the doors. The worst case arrived just after midnight. A young mother and her 6-year-old daughter, both critically injured in the multi-car pileup. The mother had multiple fractures and internal injuries, but it was the child who broke everyone's hearts. She lay unconscious on the gurney, her small body seeming impossibly fragile under the harsh emergency room lights. Traumatic brain injury, Dr. Marcus Webb announced grimly after reviewing the initial scans. There's significant swelling, possible hemorrhaging. We need to relieve the pressure immediately. Sarah had seen Marcus perform emergency brain surgery before, but never with alien observers. She watched as Zolmit stepped forward, his large frame trembling with emotion as he gazed down at the unconscious child. The neural pathways, he whispered, his voice barely audible. They are ... screaming. The harmonics are chaotic, like a song being torn apart. Can you help her? Sarah asked desperately. Like you helped with the other patient? All three aliens surrounded the child's gurney, their skin now a deep, pulsing blue that seemed to reflect their emotional state. They began to hum softly. The same complex harmonies Sarah had heard before, but this time there was something different, a note of desperation, of pushing beyond their normal limits. The damage is too severe, Kixana said, tears streaming down her transparent cheeks. The life force is fragmenting. Your surgical methods might save the physical vessel, but without neural harmony, she be brain dead, Marcus finished quietly. Even if we relieve the pressure, there's been too much damage to the neural tissue. It was then that Veltar made a decision that would change everything. We cannot allow this, he said, his voice carrying newfound authority. On Zephyr Prime, we have techniques for neural reconstruction, but they require ... double quotes. He paused, looking at his companions. They require direct harmonic interface. It is dangerous for us, potentially fatal, but it might save her. Sarah felt her heart racing. What do you mean, direct interface? We must synchronize our life frequencies with hers, Zolmit explained, his deep voice heavy with the weight of the decision. Guide her neural pathways back to harmony. But if we fail, if the damage is too severe, we could lose ourselves in the chaos of her dying mind. The room fell silent, except for the steady beeping of monitoring equipment. Sarah looked at Marcus, who was staring at the aliens with something approaching awe. You would risk your lives for a human child you've never met? All life is sacred, Kixana said simply. We came here to learn about your healing methods. We have learned that sometimes healing requires sacrifice. What followed was the most extraordinary medical procedure Sarah had ever witnessed. As Marcus worked to relieve the pressure on the child's brain, the three aliens entered a state of deep harmonic trance. Their voices rose and fell in complex patterns, and Sarah could swear she saw tendrils of light extending from their hands toward the child's head. The monitoring equipment began to fluctuate wildly, then gradually stabilized. The child's brain activity, which had been erratic and weak, began to show signs of organization. Neural pathways that had been damaged were somehow reconstructing themselves, guided by the aliens' harmonic frequencies. But the cost was becoming apparent. All three Zephyrians were showing signs of severe strain. Their skin had become almost completely transparent, revealing the complex energy networks within their bodies. Veltar suddenly collapsed, his harmonic contribution faltering. "We're losing him," Sarah said, rushing to the fallen alien's side. His pulse was weak and irregular, and his skin was flickering between blue and a sickly gray. "Do not stop," Veltar gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "She is almost almost whole again. The harmony is returning." Kixana and Zalmek continued their work, but Sarah could see they were reaching their limits. The child's brain activity was stabilizing, but at what cost? Would they save one life only to lose three others? Just as Sarah thought they might lose all of them, the child's eyes fluttered open. She looked around the room with clear, alert eyes, and when she saw her mother, who had been successfully treated for her injuries, she smiled. "Mommy?" The little girl said, her voice strong and clear. The three aliens collapsed in unison, their harmonic song finally ending. But they were breathing, their skin gradually returning to its normal blue shimmer. They had done the impossible. They had saved a life that human medicine alone could not have saved. "How?" Marcus asked, his voice filled with wonder. "How did you do that?" "We learned," Veltar said weakly, "that sometimes the most effective healing requires bridging the gap between different approaches. Your surgery provided the physical framework. Our harmonics provided the guidance for reconstruction. Neither alone would have been enough." Sarah looked around the emergency room, at the human medical staff who had worked tirelessly through the night, and at the three alien visitors who had risked everything to save a human child. She realized that this was more than just a medical exchange program. It was the beginning of something revolutionary. 3 months after the emergency room crisis, St. Mary's General Hospital had become the most sought-after medical facility in the world. The integration of Zephyrian harmonic healing with human surgical techniques had created a new paradigm, in medicine one that other hospitals were desperately trying to replicate. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the newly constructed Harmonic Healing Center, watching as Veltar worked alongside Dr. Marcus Webb on a complex cardiac procedure. The alien's melodious voice provided real-time feedback on the patient's life force, while Marcus performed the delicate repair work. What had once been a 6-hour operation was now completed in half the time, with far better outcomes. The patient's energy signatures are stabilizing, Veltar reported, his voice carrying the confident authority he developed over the past months. The cardiac rhythms are synchronizing with the harmonic frequencies. Recovery should be optimal. Sarah smiled as she watched the patient's vital signs stabilize. The elderly man who had come in with severe heart failure would not only survive but thrive, thanks to the unprecedented collaboration between human and alien medical techniques. "Dr. Chun," Kixana called from across the room, her skin now a healthy, vibrant blue. "The neural reconstruction patient from yesterday is requesting to see you." Sarah nodded and walked to the recovery ward, where the young mother from the car accident was waiting with her daughter. The child was not only fully recovered, but seemed to be thriving beyond what anyone had thought possible. The neural pathways reconstructed through harmonic healing had actually enhanced her cognitive abilities. "I wanted to thank you," the mother said, tears in her eyes. "All of you. The doctors said Emma would never wake up, but now she's better than she ever was." 6-year-old Emma looked up at Sarah with bright, intelligent eyes. "The singing doctors made my head feel better," she said with a child's simple wisdom. "They taught my brain how to fix itself." As Sarah watched the family leave, she reflected on how much had changed. The initial culture shock had given way to mutual respect and unprecedented collaboration. The Zephyrians had learned that sometimes immediate, decisive action was necessary to save lives, while the humans had discovered that healing could be about more than just fixing what was broken. It could be about achieving harmony between body, mind, and spirit. The success of the program had led to an expansion of the Galactic Medical Exchange. Alien medical students from 7 different species were now stationed at hospitals around the world, each bringing their unique healing approaches to human medicine. The crystalline beings from Andromeda had taught human doctors about cellular regeneration through mineral therapy. The gaseous entities from the nebula cluster had revolutionized respiratory medicine with their understanding of atmospheric healing. "Sarah," Marcus called from the surgical preparation room, "we've got another interesting case. A Zephyrian diplomatic vessel has requested emergency assistance. Apparently, one of their crew has been injured in a way that harmonic healing can't address." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What kind of injury?" "A severed limb," Marcus said with a grin. "They need human surgical techniques to reattach it. Seems like the cultural exchange is working both ways now." As Sarah prepared for the surgery, she thought about the remarkable journey that had brought them all here. What had started as a simple exchange program had evolved into something unprecedented, a truly universal approach to healing that transcended species boundaries. Zolmit approached her, his massive frame moving with a graceful precision that had made him one of the most respected harmonic healers in the galaxy. "Dr. Chon," he said, his deep voice carrying warm appreciation, "we have learned much from your people. The courage to cut in order to heal, the wisdom to cause brief pain to prevent greater suffering. These are lessons we will carry back to Zephyr Prime." "And we've learned from you," Sarah replied. "That healing is about more than just treating symptoms. It's about understanding the deeper harmonies of life itself." The emergency surgery was a complete success. The injured Zephyrian's limb was reattached using human surgical techniques, while alien harmonic healing accelerated the recovery process beyond anything previously thought possible. As the patient's life force stabilized under the combined care of human and alien healers, Sarah realized that they had achieved something remarkable. They had created a new form of medicine, one that honored the strengths of different species, while overcoming their individual limitations. The squeamish alien students who had once fainted at the sight of a simple suture were now confident medical practitioners who could work seamlessly alongside human doctors. The human medical staff, who had once viewed alien healing as primitive superstition, now understood the profound science behind harmonic medicine. As she watched the successful surgery conclude, Sarah knew that this was just the beginning. The universe was vast, filled with countless species and their unique approaches to healing. Each had something to teach, something to learn, and something to contribute to the great symphony of life. The Galactic Medical Exchange had proven that the most effective healing came not from the dominance of one approach over another, but from the harmony created when different methods worked together toward a common goal. In learning to heal across species lines, they had discovered something profound about the nature of life itself, that it was not meant to be lived in isolation, but in the beautiful, complex, life-giving harmony of community. In the end, the alien medical students who had nearly passed out watching human treatment had not only survived their cultural shock, they had helped create a new future for medicine across the galaxy. And in the busy corridors of St. Mary's General Hospital, where the sounds of human voices now harmonized with alien songs, that future was being written one patient at a time.